Good evening. This is World News. A single island in the Arctic is reshaping global power equations. China has issued a warning. Europe is under economic pressure. Canada is suddenly in focus, and Iran remains the central flashpoint as US military assets move closer, faster, and in large numbers. We begin in the Arctic, where geopolitics has turned icy and expensive too. As President Trump pushes for Greenland, he is now turning his attention to Canada. According to senior officials, Trump has privately raised concerns about Canada's ability to defend its Arctic territory, warning of vulnerabilities to Russia and China. Those concerns are now driving talks of a broader Arctic security strategy.
The Arctic is heating up, and Canada is stepping onto the ice. As U.S. President Donald Trump escalates threats over Greenland, Ottawa is preparing to send troops north, signaling a rare and risky showdown between allies. Canadian officials confirm plans are underway to deploy a small contingent of soldiers to Greenland for NATO exercises. The move awaits final approval from Prime Minister Mark Carney, but sources say the decision is imminent. The deployment would place Canadian forces alongside European allies, already reinforcing the island amid rising tensions. Those exercises are meant to signal unity and resistance. Denmark, Germany, France, Britain, and Nordic allies have all sent personnel. Now Canada could join them, a step that risks provoking Trump, who has threatened tariffs against countries backing Danish and Greenlandic sovereignty.
For Greenland and for the Kingdom of Denmark, we are NATO partners with Denmark, and so our full partnership stands. Our obligations on Article 5, Article 2 of NATO stand, and we stand full square behind those. I will say that I had discussions with President Xi about the situation in Greenland, about our sovereignty in the Arctic, about the sovereignty of the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark, and I found much alignment of views in that regard.
Canada already has assets in Greenland, 3 CF-18 fighter jets and a Cormorant helicopter, participating in NORAD drills with the United States. Adding ground troops would deepen Canada's footprint and underscore Ottawa's commitment to Arctic security within NATO. Trump argues Greenland is vital to U.S. national security and critical minerals, and claims Denmark cannot defend it from Russia or China. European leaders reject that premise, warning that coercion would fracture NATO and destabilize the Arctic. In response, EU envoys are weighing retaliatory tariffs. In Washington, lawmakers from both parties have criticized Trump's push to acquire Greenland and punish allies who resist. The dispute has become a flashpoint in transatlantic relations. Prime Minister Carney has drawn a firm line. Greenland's future belongs to Greenland and Denmark alone. He says Canada supports sovereignty everywhere and believes Arctic security is best achieved collectively through NATO, not unilateral pressure. Canada is also boosting its own Arctic posture, investing in infrastructure and readiness while urging de-escalation. But with troops potentially heading north and tempers flaring in Washington, the risk of a broader rift is real. This is not just about an island. It's about alliance lines, sovereignty, and the balance of power in a rapidly changing Arctic. Canada's move could steady NATO or test it like never before.
This did not begin with a trade war, it began with an island. US President Donald Trump has escalated his push to acquire Greenland, this time using tariffs as leverage, a sweeping new threat aimed squarely at European allies unless Denmark agrees to negotiate. China has now reacted, warning Washington against destabilizing the region. Here's the first look.
On Greenland, Beijing is firing back hard. As President Donald Trump ramps up threats to take control of Greenland, China is now publicly rejecting what it calls a manufactured excuse. Beijing says the so-called China threat is being used to justify American self-interest in the Arctic. China's foreign ministry urged the United States to stop using China as a justification for aggressive moves in Greenland. Officials warned Washington against turning Arctic security into a geopolitical power grab. Trump has repeatedly argued Greenland faces threats from Russia and China and says that's why the island must come under U.S. control. He now wants leverage, threatening tariffs to force Denmark and Europe to negotiate.
But we need that because if you take a look outside of Greenland right now, there are Russian destroyers, there are Chinese destroyers and bigger, there are Russian submarines all over the place. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland, and that's what they're going to do if we don't. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
In posts on Truth Social, Trump warned of 10% tariffs starting February 1st, 2026, rising to 25% by June unless Europe agrees to what he calls the complete and total purchase of Greenland. European Union and NATO leaders have united behind Denmark, warning that economic coercion could damage transatlantic trust. They insist Greenland's future must be decided by Greenlanders, not tariffs. The dispute has exposed strains within NATO itself. Some U.S. lawmakers and even European populist allies are distancing themselves from Trump's tactics, warning of lasting damage to Allied unity. Emergency meetings are underway in Brussels, with EU officials discussing possible retaliatory trade measures if tariffs proceed. China, meanwhile, is watching closely, rejecting blame while benefiting from Western division. For now, Greenland remains the fault line. China says it won't be used as an excuse. Europe says sovereignty is non-negotiable, and the United States is testing how far pressure can go before alliances begin to fracture.
From the Arctic to the South China Sea and now the Middle East, the Pentagon has confirmed the redeployment of a U.S. carrier strike group from the Indo-Pacific to the CENTCOM region as tensions with Iran intensify amid widespread unrest inside the country. As the center of this movement, the USS Abraham Lincoln moving swiftly to its target.
The U.S. military is on the move. Heavy transport aircraft are crossing continents. Aircraft carriers are shifting theaters. And the Middle East is once again at the center of rising global tension, with Iran firmly in the spotlight. In the latest development, 2 additional U.S. Air Force C-17 Globemasters have arrived in the Middle East. These massive aircraft are built for rapid power projection, carrying troops, armored vehicles, missile systems, and heavy equipment, not civilians. Flight tracking shows C-17s moving from U.S. bases through Europe, including Germany and the UK, before heading to Qatar, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and other forward bases. Some routes point toward Diego Garcia, a key hub for long-range strike operations. Additionally, Israeli fighter jets were also spotted flying north over Tel Aviv, due to U.S. sending more warplanes to Middle East. These flights are backed by C-5 Galaxy super heavy transports and aerial refueling tankers like the KC-135 and KC-46, essential for sustained combat operations. Analysts say the scale and coordination suggest far more than routine logistics. At sea, the Pentagon has shifted major naval power. USS Abraham Lincoln and USS George Washington are now operating under U.S. Central Command. Each carrier functions as a floating airbase, capable of launching non-stop strike missions. Meanwhile, some personnel at Al Aldaba Air Base in Qatar were advised to temporarily relocate, a move often tied to fears of retaliation, missile threats, or rapid escalation. All this unfolds as Iran faces massive internal unrest. Protests fueled by economic collapse have turned openly anti-regime. Washington insists these deployments do not confirm imminent strikes, but they do ensure maximum military flexibility. The message is unmistakable. This is not business as usual. Whether meant as deterrence, evacuation readiness, or preparation for rapid escalation, the U.S. is clearly positioning for every scenario. The question now, is this a warning or the final stage before conflict?
And unrest continues inside Iran. The United States is reinforcing its military footprint across the region. Fighter jets have now arrived in Jordan. Patriot missile systems are being positioned. Naval forces are converging. Military analysts say this is no longer about limited deterrence, but readiness for large-scale operations.
The Middle East is once again on the edge. U.S. warplanes are moving, aircraft carriers are repositioning, and rhetoric between Washington and Tehran has reached its most dangerous pitch in years. New military deployments combined with direct warnings from Iran are fueling fears that a direct U.S.-Iran confrontation could erupt with little notice. At the center of the storm, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and a growing belief in Tehran that he may be personally targeted. U.S. forces are visibly reinforcing the region. The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and its strike group are moving toward the U.S. Central Command Zone, accompanied by destroyers USS Spruance and USS Michael Murphy. Military officials say the carrier group could enter the Middle East theater within days. At the same time, at least 12 U.S. F-15 fighter jets supported by aerial refueling aircraft have arrived in Jordan, a move analysts say dramatically increases U.S. strike capability. The F-15, unlike the stealth-focused F-35, can carry up to 23,000 pounds of munitions, making it a key platform for high-intensity conflict scenarios. President Donald Trump has added fuel to the fire with blunt and deeply personal remarks aimed at Iran's leadership. Trump has openly called for the end of Ayatollah Khamenei's decades-long rule, saying Iran needs new leadership. He has repeatedly voiced support for Iranian protesters, telling them to take over institutions, and claiming that American help was on the way. Though Trump later said executions in Iran had paused, his tone toward Tehran has remained confrontational, describing Iran's leadership as brutal, illegitimate, and reliant on mass violence to survive. Tehran has responded with its strongest warning yet. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian declared that any attack on Ayatollah Khamenei would be treated as an act of war. In a public statement, Pezeshkian said striking Iran's supreme leader would amount to a declaration of war against the Iranian nation itself, not just the regime. Iranian officials have accused Washington of orchestrating unrest, imposing economic warfare through sanctions, and attempting to destabilize the country from within. The message from Tehran is clear: crossing this line would trigger full-scale confrontation. All of this is unfolding against the backdrop of Iran's most severe internal crisis in decades. Protests erupted in late December over economic collapse, hyperinflation, and a crashing currency, then rapidly escalated into nationwide calls for regime change. Iranian authorities responded with mass arrests, live fire, and near-total internet blackouts. Human rights groups claim thousands have been killed, figures the Iranian government disputes, while acknowledging significant casualties. The unrest has now quieted on the streets, but anger simmers beneath the surface, and both sides appear to be calculating their next move. Despite the dramatic military movements, officials stress that deployment does not equal decision, but history shows that wars often begin not with announcements, but with positioning. Right now, the U.S. is building maximum leverage, Iran is drawing its red lines, and miscalculation on either side could ignite a conflict far larger than either intends. The question is no longer whether tensions are rising, but whether diplomacy can still outrun the momentum of war.
So, jets in the air, carriers at sea, missile defenses activated. From Greenland to the Gulf, this is a White House reshaping pressure points, economic, territorial, and military all at once. That's World News Tonight. We'll continue tracking every development as it happens. Good night.